Welcome, everybody. I know it's the afternoon, but this is actually a panel I'm very excited to be up here talking with, because if you've ever heard me talk about the chapters, you know I get very excited. I've had the pleasure of attending probably, 6 or 7 chapter meetings over the last 2.5 years. And each chapter has its own DNA, and that's probably the best way I can describe them. Its own personalities, its own way of meeting, traditions, leaderships, even rituals that they've started. So let me introduce myself. I'm Alfred. I'm the Director of Membership. When I started, chapters were meeting very informally. As far as NetHope, the European chapter was meeting twice a year, and occasionally some staff would go. And over the last 2 years, we have seen just this great energy around the different chapters. And in part it's because some of our CIOs and other leaders in our organizations have seen the value of meeting regionally and being able to want to expand that to their local offices, to the different regions. So this week we've heard from CIOs and CEOs and partners and the governor of Washington and just about everybody else. But today we get to hear from people who are working closely to the field, dealing with different challenges, dealing with different priorities. And it's an opportunity to hopefully give you a better kind of global view of what our members are doing and how they're overcoming some of the challenges where they work. Like the summit, the chapters are a place where ideas are born. I think maybe Jonathan, I'll steal your line, that that's the incubation period, I think, for many ideas. But we've also seen some of our greatest initiatives come out of chapters. And so this is an opportunity to get our chapters together, to have a discussion about what their work is, and to hopefully get some collaboration just even among the chapters so that we can hopefully have a greater impact. NetHope is now over 50 global nonprofits, and we work all around the world. These chapters, we have 5 chapters, now expand to the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Europe, and North America. And they've had very successful initiatives coming out of the chapters. Today I'm very happy to have this panel of members from the different chapters who have either taken the initiative to lead a chapter or volunteer their time to make sure that that they host a chapter, that we have a place to do it, and to follow up on the initiatives that come out of the chapters. So I'd like to start by welcoming our panel today. Christian Alfaro. Christian is with Save the Children. He's the regional head of IT for Latin America and the Caribbean. Christian started at the first Latin American chapter meeting in Bogota, Colombia 2 years ago, and since then has hosted us in Guatemala. Suhel Atamne from Norwegian Refugee Council. He is the chapter that is about to meet for the first time in December in Amman, but has already been working with other members in the region. So happy to have you here. Kundwani Matalimanja, I've been practicing.
Good.
Head of IT for East and Southern Africa for Save the Children. Kundwani was instrumental, as well as Martin Mablu from PATH in getting the Africa chapter started this year. Claudia Garcia from Norwegian Refugee Council also has been participating in the Latin American chapter meeting and is getting some members together to work on an initiative in Colombia. Braulio Oliveira from Winrock International, the CIO from Winrock. And Thomas Rubacher, International Director for ICT for SOS Children's Villages. I'm going to give you microphones. I'm going to pass one down if you don't mind. Well, thank you for being here today. It's great to have a panel not only from different member organizations, but from different regions of the world. Each of you represent a very different region, and you're all facing different challenges and have different opportunities to work together with other NetHope members. I start off by saying that each chapter has their own DNA because it's hard for me to say that the chapters are share this, that they have anything alike in their personalities. You're all very different. And yet you have this one common thing that you're looking for collaboration opportunities to be able to bring more to the organization and hopefully to the people you're serving. Can you each just take a minute or two to tell us a little bit about your chapter, how it started, and what the priorities are for your chapter? And I'll start with you, Christian.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex. Thanks for that very warm welcome and introduction. So as you said, I'm Christian Alfaro, Regional Head of IT for Save the Children. And along with Claudia here, my really good colleague, we've been participating in this really amazing journey that we've started a couple of years ago. No, actually last year. It seems like it has passed a long time, but yeah, last year we were having these discussions. We started with you. Why don't we do a Latin chapter session? And fortunately for us, we were able to do it in Colombia, and we were hosting that at that time. And it was amazing to have this, this big group of people. We were around 10, 12 people from different organizations. And the moment we, started talking about, the challenges that we were facing, the problems and the good stuff that has happened in each one of, our organizations, we were really committed and excited to see that we were not the only ones that were having those kind of challenges, and some of us and some others had different approaches to these challenges. So it was amazing to do that. So the challenging thing was, to which initiatives we were trying to come up with, because all of us had different approaches. So we had this really great sessions. Sergio from SOS, he has been a really great guy supporting this chapter as well. Unfortunately he's not here, but we were able to come up with 2-3 initiatives that we were all agreed on that. Absolutely, yeah. So after that. We had a second session in Guatemala, my home country, this year, and actually, based on the experience that we had last year, I can give you an example of the Bolivia experience. That all of us, at least 5 or 6 organizations that we had presence in Bolivia, we were able to, just see that we were using the same ISP. And we were having a really bad service on that. So and then we said, why don't we come up with this ISP and do like not like a riot, but at least we were able to to demand them a better service and SLAs. And turns out that was a really good approach, because we were able to sign a contract that we revised and that we agreed. And also this year, I've seen that the internet bill has come down, in big numbers. So that's the kind of things that we would like to replicate as well on this kind of stuff. And there are some other stuff that I would like to comment, but that's going to be more on during this discussion. But thanks for that.
Great, thank you. And Sukhil, I know that you haven't actually had your first chapter meeting, but we'll be having it. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you expect some of your regional priorities will lead the chapter as it starts to take some shape.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, and thanks NetHope for this amazing week. We haven't had our first chapter meeting, but hopefully we'll get there in December. Within this chapter meeting, we're actually looking forward to have some more information and collaborative approach with other NetHope members regarding the ICT and emergencies and so on. We haven't had any collaborative initiatives and approaches within the region so far. We had a couple of meetings with like visits from NetHope and so on, but like a real collaboration is not yet there. So hopefully within this chapter meeting we will be all together and have this approach together.
Great. Kundwani, you just attended the Africa chapter meeting and helped lead that effort, and it was an extraordinary event with people from, I don't know how many, I forget how many countries, 28 countries or 30 countries, and 3 days of really high energy, amazing presentations, and there's a lot of work that's come out of that chapter. Talk a little bit about that chapter, the priorities that the chapter chose, and just your general impression of where the chapter is going.
Thank you so much, Alex. I think first and foremost, all week I've been hearing people come up here and everybody was complaining about the lights, and I thought people were joking. It's actually true. I can't see any of you. It's actually, so whatever they were saying was really, really true. I can't see any of you. But I just talk about the Africa chapter. Well, if I was to remember correctly how the whole business of the Africa chapter started was in, I think, 2015 when we were in Copenhagen. First day we were all busy with our CIOs. I was with my CIO, my colleagues were with their CIO. But for some reason, Africans, when they go to a function, they have a way of finding themselves to some place. So we were having lunch and we just happened to find ourselves in one area where there was food that was familiar to ourselves. So we started talking, me and my colleagues from IRC, I think there was Martin Baru from PATH and the others, and then Ahmed from SOS. And then we started discussing and saying, wouldn't it be nice if we had something like this from an Africa context and we would be able to do the same things. And then somebody was like, yeah, we had this before, we had the East Africa chapter, it died a natural death. But then after that, the discussions started, and then early this year, more discussions around it. Martin started asking everybody else to comment and see if we could have something. And before we knew it, everybody was excited. We had the interworking group, which operates in Kenya, which had already been connecting us into different areas of working together. So then everybody else realized it was an important thing for us to do. So we organized ourselves. And then, yes, we met in June. There were about 20 members, 80 participants, if I can correctly think about. And as always, our discussion started from the very first point, talking about connectivity, infrastructure, because those are the issues that normally challenge us in the region that we work in, especially in Africa. But then at that particular point in time, we were only talking about East and Southern Africa. But as we kept on in the discussion, as the week progressed, we realized we were missing colleagues from West and Central Africa. And there were one or two that were in the group. And then as the week panned out, we realized we face all the same problems, we all have the same challenges, and some of our organizations are operating across the continent. And we agreed to say, I think what a good way, let's just call it the Africa chapter. So by the time we finished, it was the Africa chapter with very big plans for us to meet in Dakar next year and then continue things from there. So it's an exciting moment. Everybody is so energized. It's unfortunate most of them couldn't make it to this session, but we're really energized and we really want to move forward around capacity building, information security, and so many other things that, if I could mention just one or two things that we're thinking about.
Great, thank you. And Claudia, can you just mention maybe the top 2 or 3 priorities for Latin America to share with the group?
Yes, thanks, Alex. Yes, in Latin America, we have identified many opportunities using the technology. But we have to start improving the connectivity for the regions because we are working in areas, isolated, remote areas where the vulnerable population have no access to internet. So we have to start to improve the access on that areas. After that, we can also work articulating solutions for ICT for development. In order to leverage the development of the region and these populations using the technology. As we have said before on these conferences, we know that the technology is a tool to improve the conditions of living for the people. So there are many opportunities, giving access to new markets, empowering the communities, accessing to the rights. There are many opportunities using the technologies that we have identified. Also, we are working in education in many of our organizations, and we have to improve the access to different skills, create the capacity on the communities, and give them digital autonomy for the communities. Yes, and for that we have to engage many sectors. Even in our organizations, Engage program, ICT, and also private sector. And yes, NetHope is working very well trying to, yes, improve the articulation of these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. So I promise I didn't mean to break up the global north and the south, but I think it worked out that way. So Braulio, you recently hosted a North American chapter meeting, and we've only met maybe twice now at this point, so it's a new chapter. And tell us a little bit about your experience of what that chapter has been like for you.
It's very similar to the experience of my colleagues here on stage, in that it's been wonderful to be able to collaborate and meet with our colleagues in a more tighter setting than such a big setting such as a summit. So that's been just fantastic. And two, we've been able to forge deeper relationships and work in topics that are of interest to a smaller subset of the larger group. So it's a similar experience for us as well. We've only had 2 sessions so far, but we'll have our 3rd one in January, and I think we're on a roll.
Great, great. And Thomas, the first chapter started with Europe. So you probably, I think of you as, and some of the European members as the godfathers of the chapters, maybe the good godfathers of the chapters. But tell us a little bit about the European chapter, how it started, where it's today, and from where you sit, being involved heavily in NetHope over the years, and with the chapter, as you hear from these new chapters, what perspective do you have to share with them that might help guide how they develop their chapters?
Yeah, the Euro chapter is indeed quite old chapter already, but it started in Africa. It started actually in 2010 in Kenya at the NetHope Summit in Kenya, where some Euro guys sat together and found it so great, all these possibilities you have when you share personally, when you sit around the table, so that we said, let's do this more often. Yeah? And then we started with, I think, Friday afternoon meetings in London, and scaled up 1-day meeting, 2-day meeting, and then went also to a lot of other destinations around in Europe. So we are working 7 years now successfully, and we are developing forward. And I think at the beginning it was really more sharing, more trust building between ourselves, more discussion, and then we went into things like sharing IT strategies, sharing KPIs, and then on the next level, we started really some kind of collaboration projects also, and our highlights are certainly the NGO reference model and the GDPR maturity analysis, which we did together with a couple of Euro members. And what we are trying now is to find better ways to start even more collaboration, more structured ways to start collaboration, not letting it grow more or less accidentally, and finding also ways how we can carry these kind of projects better into NetHope, to see what is interesting for NetHope, where can NetHope help us to scale them up. And maybe especially for the Europe chapter, and a bit interesting is that we have been some kind of crowd-organized chapter. We have no leadership. We go from chapter meeting to chapter meeting. Each meeting is somehow organized by somebody else. The meetings are quite big now with 40, I think we had 40 participants or even more invoking when we were at WWF. And one member helps the other, but the responsibility for the chapter meeting is always at another member. And so far it went well. And it helped us also to bring a lot of creativity in and new, so to say, new features in our meetings. And this is something I would also recommend to the chapters in the South and to the newer chapters. It's important that you have structure. It's very important. And but it's also important to be creative and to bring new things. And with this, we can probably also inspire ourselves mutually. We can learn from you. You can check out what we are doing. And this way develop forward our kind of meetings and maybe even inspire NetHope. I think there were one or the other things which we transferred already from the Euro chapter to the NetHope summits, and this is very good. And maybe one thing is, of course, to mention always especially for the newer chapters, really take care about the brand of NetHope. When you meet under the flag of NetHope, then you have a certain responsibility, and you have to be aware about this, and because otherwise we could get really into troubles. This is one advice, and the other one is when you invite corporates, partners, either to say something, to have an agenda point, or to use their facilities. It's what we learned in the Euro chapter at the beginning. It's really necessary to brief them very intensively, because there we had some flaws at the beginning, I remember, especially when these are vendors which are not known to NetHope yet, which haven't been at a summit yet, because they always they often come with a little bit peculiar perceptions of who we are, what we do, and then are not really precise and concise in what they are presenting and what they are offering there, and this sometimes got a little bit boring. So if you do this, manage them well, look at NetHope, and look on the NetHope team here, how they manage their vendors, and take care of the NetHope brand.
Thanks, Thomas. So one of the things you mentioned is, and it came out of the European chapter meeting, is the way that ideas might surface through the different chapters. And scale is a big challenge, I think, in our sector. And as the ideas come out of the chapters, how can we think about how we can scale that just beyond that chapter and for other initiatives or programs? I think probably the NGO reference model is a great example of that, that came out of the European chapter meeting with Greg and Mike and those guys who did a fantastic job. But what are other examples that might be happening in the chapters that you want others to know about? Christian, I'll let you go first. You have the microphone.
Thanks, Alex. Well, one of the something I wanted to share with the public here as well is that these kind of ideas. For example, this year we were hit. This region was hit by many natural disasters, like 3 hurricanes and 2 earthquakes. So it was amazing to see within the chapter how quickly we were organizing ourselves and see who's working here, who's has this kind of equipment in place. So it's like trying to coordinate ourselves. So based on this, we had a really great idea for next year. To why don't we do an interagency training in terms of humanitarian response? Since we did one in Save the Children this year and had a really, really great impact, because we ran that training in July in Panama City. And after all what happened in the region, right now I have 2 of my staff deployed in the Caribbean, providing support to the leading telecommunications company in the Caribbean called Digicel. Deploying VSATs. One of them went to British Virgin Islands, and the other one went to Dominica. And right now, one of them is finishing the deployment mission in Puerto Rico, helping out RAMI. And as well, as you know, I'm going to be covering RAMI for 2 weeks in Puerto Rico after I'm going back from NetHope from the summit. So this is the kind of ideas that we have come up with. That we saw that the region is quite, or it's going to be quite affected by natural disasters. So what we have seen this year. So this is the kind of ideas we have for next year. And my colleague Mark Hawkins, has been very, very collaborative to that as well. And we're here supporting the idea as well as NetHope. Yeah.
Right. If you can remind me, what about in the Africa chapter? What are some ideas that you see that are surfacing that may become broader NetHope initiatives?
I think if I could talk about the Africa chapter, possibly maybe some of the things that happened there are things that we possibly have seen somewhere else. But I think one of the things that came out and stood out clearly was this whole issue of devolving headquarters into the Global South. And I'm sure some of you had the privilege of seeing my colleague Lucas who's the head of the technology hub from Save the Children, present, it really came out as a revelation to some of the organization, or most of the organizations, to see within the Africa chapter some of the people that are working at a global level. I think we had an example as well from IRC, where they have some of their global engineers operating from Nairobi. So it was an indication to show that there is talent there is potential, there is capability within these chapters, and we felt it's one of the things that we need to try and push as much as possible to our leaders, especially when we have the opportunity to come to the summit. And I think you probably, if you're involved, I'm sure you were involved with the formulation of the agendas this year. There was the name of Martin Baru, who is also from our chapter. So we basically are saying, when we have something and we feel it's beneficial, we should not be timid enough not to raise it, but we should be able to raise it and find forums where we can express it and be able to have an opportunity to show it to the world. Because then when we do that, then other people are able to learn from it and other people are able to appreciate. And I think people have appreciated this week from seeing that, but I think people will continue to appreciate that. And as Kenya and other centers within Africa continue to grow, I think this will be a direction where some organizations will continue to think that possibly that's what they should do. So that's one of the things that came out, and that was a huge highlight, and that we continue to feel that we should spearhead that in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Claudia, recently Latin America has identified a region where maybe a handful of members might start working together on a connectivity project. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's something that it's an important issue for other regions in the world.
Yes, in Latin America, we are starting to work together with Save the Children in the different initiatives, like improve the connectivity on the demilitarized zones with the FARC, the oldest guerrilla in Colombia, left the weapons. And so we start to engage the other NetHope members, because on the field, many NetHope members didn't know that they are part of NetHope, or what are the benefits that they can get from be part of how can we work together. So we take a lot of time, knowing who is working there in the same areas and who is interested in participate. Also engaging other institutions, because we have to work also with the local government, because they have another initiatives, and with the local partners, the ISP. So it's a challenge to, first of all, to know what we can do with NetHope and how can we connect all the members on the field. And also it's important to have the vision from the field through the chapters, because we can give the opportune feedback about what is happening, how is going the initiatives, and what are the needs for the vulnerable population. So.
Great, thank you. Barlia, Thomas, both of you manage a large global workforce. And I know, Barlia, the chapter is still fairly new to you, but I've seen many of our CIOs be very supportive of their staff to participate and to host chapter meetings in their different offices, and also to dedicate some resources to allow their staff to participate in the regional level. Have either of you seen the benefit to your staff by participating? Do you see a member value by having these regional chapters beyond just the headquarters? And do you have any examples of perhaps have you seen that work for either of your organizations? I realize that this is still fairly new for Winrock, or how you might see it in the future.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge potential for Winrock personnel to engage. And in fact, we do have staff in Africa, so there's no reason why not to participate. I wish we had a chapter in Asia, since we are big in Asia as well. Because it makes a lot of sense to have that collaboration, as you mentioned, closest to the field as possible. So there's value there. There's value for the team within Windrock, and I'm sure the other NGOs that are part of the North America chapter, to cross-pollinate talent, ideas. So we definitely see a lot of value in that. And I heard that in Africa you all had 72 people attend one of your chapter meetings, so that's fantastic. If you can manage that and organize it effectively, hopefully one day we'll have that many people attending one of our chapter meetings as well. So, yeah.
No, I see absolute value, and I pushed my colleagues in Africa and in Latin America to start chapters with other colleagues because I think it's very important for our people there to have also this chance to exchange and eventually to really collaborate with other NGOs. Not all of them have the possibility to come to the summit to exchange here. Not all of them, or we can't bring them to the Euro chapter. So the best thing what can happen is when local chapters rise, regional chapters. And my dream for the future would be that we really create there also collaboration across NGOs. I know that some NGOs are very good, for instance, in these Meraki things. So we speculated already. Why not asking the ones who are good and who are big, like us, outsourcing our Meraki there in the future? Or this center you have in Nairobi is something very, very interesting because I also smell possibilities there for collaboration. And we do a very similar thing. For instance, we call it a decentralized development center in Peru, in Lima, where we have 6 software developers sitting, which help us really to develop further our global program database, and which are our global SOS competency center for Salesforce. So we have all our Salesforce energy, so to say, there in Latin America. And why not trying in the future to bring such decentralized centers also together and share forces there? I think we could save a lot of time and budget by doing this. And this is probably something which we should envisage for the future, because such things don't happen overnight. You have to plan them really mid or long term. And starting the dialogue. But now it's really great for me that we have these chapters in Latin America and Africa, in Middle East. It's very important that we are doing something there also, because it's a very hot region, so to say. A lot of things are going on nowadays.
No pressure, Sahil.
Yeah.
No pressure.
and hopefully in Asia soon again.
Great, thank you. So I want to spend the last few minutes just talking about what's next for your chapter. What do you see that happening in the chapter, and then maybe a year from now, maybe a few years from now, and what do you think it will take to get there?
Sure. One of the major challenges we have right now is that we've been at least this year we've been very busy with all this humanitarian response and everywhere. So I believe that the key thing here is to keep focused on just a couple of initiatives and be very focused on someone taking the lead of that, and that will be definitely something that will be very helpful for chapters. So from my perspective is that like I mentioned before, this interagency training in humanitarian, it's something that we all are, welcoming, because we have seen that there is a need of that, especially when, one of us is trying to take a lead, or some others are doing something else in humanitarian, but at least we can combine our efforts. And, with this collaboration that I was mentioning, that thanks to NetHope, that we were able to send one of our guys, and they were, something that I must say, and that I'm really, really impressed, is that the guys were really happy about it, because right after we did the training, they were able to put their knowledge into practice, and since, as Save the Children, where we have presence, we were not doing a response in terms of the IT was involved because there was no need for it. So they were very happy that they were going to go and do actual hands-on work and actually feel that they were helping people. And this is something that I was very I would like to see in the chapter, that all the agencies that are members of the Latin chapter as well, or that are participating, that they could be participating in the future in these secondments that thanks to NetHope we've been able to do. So this is the kind of stuff that we would like to do, and like I said before, focus in a couple of things that like the quick wins, and so we can quickly make it as a hook so we can keep working towards great initiatives. So yeah, basically.
So Hel, you haven't had one yet, but you have the 30-second pitch. You have all of these CIOs here in the room that can get their people there.
For the Middle East chapter meeting, I'm looking forward actually to see what kind of output is going to be generated. Since we targeted the regional ICT and field staff, not the CIOs like the chapter meeting in Europe. So, and then after having this outcome or ideas from the chapter meeting, to find some way, a proper way to execute them properly within the region, and like opportunities for collaboration between like the NetHope members in the hot area, as Thomas mentioned, is quite big and promising.
Good morning.
Thank you. I think just like Thomas has said, we've got to stick in with collaboration. We need to continue. We just met this year. But I think we've already mapped out some of the pain points in our region, and connectivity and infrastructure will always continue to be, as long as we have the situations happening in South Sudan and the other areas. So that will continue, and we think we can continue to input into the C&I group at the global level. But also we did identify issues around power, which is also a big problem in Africa. And this is not just about power as a source, but having expertise within the region and the continent of people that can be able to handle these situations when they do rise up. Capacity building is an area that is also very evident. There is still a need for training, either online training, classroom training, but also collaborations during workshops for people just to know and understand and get to appreciate a few things. But I think as we continue to forge forward, I think it would be interesting to see more participation of the HQ into our meetings as well. I'm sure people would get the benefits of having some of the CIOs attend our chapter meeting, and just to share directly to some of the people who might never have the opportunity to come to a summit like this one. So those are just maybe a few, but I'm sure as we go and meet next year, we'll sit down and look at critically what else is bigger in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. In the 3 years or 5 years time, we would like to have articulated solutions among different affiliates, members of NetHope, agencies, and other relevant actors on the field. And also, yes, we would like to face the new challenges that we have in the region. Latin America is a region affected by climate change. It's very sensitive to the natural disasters. So for next year, Save the Children is thinking in organize training interagency to prepare and have the capacity on the agencies to respond in case of emergency. Yes, and have articulated response. And also we have to work in ICT for the, in the interagency. Yeah.
All right. And for the North America chapter, the next couple of big things that we're looking for, one, you're all probably very excited and anxious to know when the next chapter meeting is going to be, and that will be announced later with great fanfare. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be in January. As we start putting together the agenda for that meeting, I think we're going to be looking at M&E as a topic area, but that certainly might evolve between now and January as the agenda firms up. But we're looking forward to having the meeting. The folks that are already participating in putting this thing together are very excited about what we can do together when we come together in January. So stay tuned.
Yeah, for the Europe chapter, I foresee 2 or 3 things. The first and maybe very important one is to keep the good spirit we have there, this camaraderie and this trust, because we are getting bigger and bigger. There's more and more people, and it will be a challenge to have the same relationship between all these people there than we had in the past time. The second thing I would like to see is that we intensify our collaboration, do more collaboration projects, do it in a more structured way, and find a way that we get this seamless into the big NetHope world, that we cooperate better with Frank, with Jel, with Jim. And also, as a third point, I would say where we have to work on is better integrate what we are doing vertically, so to say, with what the South chapters are doing. So that we don't risk that this is breaking up in silos somehow, but that we listen carefully to what you are doing and that we communicate in a better way maybe than we do now, what we are doing to you.
Thank you. So I'd like to take a few minutes to see if there are any questions from the audience to any of the panelists. And Frederick, do you have a microphone, or we could give you one? Here. Okay.
I can roll mine. Okay. Frederick?
Oh. Thank you.
So having hosted at least one in Europe, which was a big one, but traveling in Europe is different than traveling in Africa or traveling in South America. And I'm impressed that you got 80 people, 72 people, but I'm sure that the people from Central African Republic or Mali and so on may not come. What are you thinking about also encouraging local gatherings? I was in the DAB once, and we gathered all the IT that were linked to NetHope. And quickly, just by doing a tour de table on connectivity in the DAB, we all saw that we all had different contracts with the same provider. So what I would look for is an encouragement of also country-level, at least gatherings and exchanges, because we cannot afford, unfortunately, especially in Africa, to have people travel across. And also there's a language barrier, too. So.
Actually, that issue came up when we met in June, and one of the things that we learned from our Kenyan colleagues is that they already had an existing interworking group for NGO IT people, and we are encouraging people within the countries, and when we left was to try and replicate the same in different countries where people now had met at this summit, at this Africa chapter, that they could start something of their own. But I think we need to have some way of where we can coordinate it to make sure that it's happening. And we've asked our colleagues in Kenya to sort of help us on how they set up, that countries that are interested to have something similar could then replicate it in their own country, and then maybe just formulate the same ideologies and principles that they are running in Kenya. But it's really a very good point and worthy noting.
Can I add something? Yeah, and in addition, for your question, Pietro, I think it's a matter of us as heads of IT also to do a lot of business partnering with our stakeholders, because there's money involved into this as well. And from what I would like to bring all my people from the region as well, but the currency factor, the money factor is quite important here, but this is like one of the, for us, at least on my side, I can speak for myself that I've been very lucky to, my boss has been very supportive on that, and this is something that a key thing that we can.
I think Pietro is very anxious.
Yeah, I'm very anxious. I'm very eager. So spreading the word of NetHope in the country offices, in the field, to get your country directors to know about NetHope, to get your head of finance and so on. I think there's a great opportunity here, because even within our headquarters, we know that a lot of people ignore or don't know about NetHope, and I think they miss out on the opportunities, because I know when I talk about this with HR, they're like, oh, we don't do this. We don't have a forum to discuss and to share. So I would encourage you also to do that, to maybe bring your CD to have an opening speech, or things like that, is also to spread the word.
Thank you, Pietro.
Great. Probably time for one more question. Can't see. Okay. Great. Well, I want to just thank all of you for taking the time to speak to us about the chapters. There are a lot of members that spend a lot of time getting chapter meetings together that aren't here on stage or here today at the summit. But a lot of work goes into these chapter meetings, and a lot of value is derived from all these chapters. So I want to thank all of you for all of your time and for your leadership of all these chapters, and very excited to see what comes of next year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody confused as to whether or not it's bright up here? Okay, I just want to make sure that we had gotten that. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. For those that are wandering in the back, thank you. Come on in and have a seat. I had the distinct pleasure of introducing our closing keynote today. And I have to say, I've had the opportunity to get to know the team at Okta a bit over the last several months as we have thought about the Center for the Digital Nonprofit, and we've worked with them and gotten their input on where we should be focusing and how we might build a constructive partnership around the center. Frederick Harris is the COO and co-founder of Okta, and I have to tell you that it was one of the more entertaining and insightful meetings that I've had along the way. Not only has Freddie built a tremendous company in Okta, and built on top of a career that spans venture capital and Hummer Winblad to Salesforce, to lots of different things. He's actually really, really funny. And it was enjoyable to sit there and switch back and forth to talking about digital technology and nonprofits, to making jokes about living in Washington, D.C. and sort of everything else in between. And it's that kind of, I think, creativity and energy that he's brought to Okta that has made it such a phenomenal company, a great partner for us to work with, and I am sure will carry through in his conversations this afternoon. He's also been a driving force as a key member of Okta's management team. Freddie's really passionate about working with customers and partners to make them successful, and helping build Okta into a great place to work. And I think the fact that they've stood up the Okta for Good Fund and brought Erin into this role where she can work with us on a day-to-day basis really speaks to his willingness to not only share his expertise inside his company, but well beyond that, and ultimately to the benefit of this community. So I'm sure that we will learn quite a bit over the next few minutes, and please join me in welcoming Freddie up here to close us out for the day.
Hi, good afternoon. It's bright up here. Has anyone said that yet? Thank you very much, Lauren, for that very kind introduction. I didn't know that I was so funny, so now I'm going to have to come up with some jokes. The first one is, does anyone know that it's really bright up here? I can basically see like 3 people in the front row and no one else, so you can check your email or do whatever else you want, and it doesn't matter because I can't see. So, as Lauren said, my name is Frederick Harris. I am the Chief Operating Officer, one of the 2 founders of a company called Okta. I sit on the board of directors, and thank you all very much for having me here this afternoon. I am very honored and very humbled to be here. And the first thing I'd like to say is thank you to everyone in this room for all the work that you do, because folks like me get to spend a little bit of our time thinking about the major problems that you are all addressing and spending your lives and your careers focused on. and then a bunch of other time trying to work on other problems. And you are all working on the most important and inspiring and world-changing problems that are out there. Clearly, you're all the best and the brightest in all of your fields, and there's many, many different things that you could be doing. So I'd just like to say, start by saying thank you very much for having me here, and thank you all very much for all the very important work that you all do. So why am I here? Well, I'm here because, first of all, we at Okta are very, very proud, and I'm personally proud to be part of the founding group for the Center for the Digital Nonprofit. I think it's a great initiative. It's a great mission. It couldn't be started by a better group than NetHope, and we think that there's huge opportunity there. So it's something that obviously we want to do because we think that we can bring some technical acumen to the party, but also because we believe very strongly in the mission and the vision that the center has and that NetHope has more broadly. So I'll talk a little bit about myself because that's what you get to do when you have a microphone and a captive audience. So this is a good time to check your email. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what we do at Okta, some of the problems that we help organizations solve, including a few of the organizations that are here in the room. And then I'll open it up for a Q&A, and then I'll be around later, so I'd be happy to answer any questions too. Before I start, there is one thing that Lauren mentioned that I just want to emphasize, which is, a lot of people traditionally growing up, if they do have extra capital or things, they want to give donations at the end of the year because it's a tax advantage or all these other kinds of things, or it makes them feel good, or when I was younger, it was so I could call my mom and tell her that I did it so that she'd be proud of me. But when we started Okta, we knew that, we hoped, obviously, we had a big vision, so we had big plans, and we thought that we could do something pretty important for technology and the industry in general. But we wanted to make sure that as soon as we were able to, we could also participate more in social impact as an organization and as a group of people. We pretty early on contributed, our headquarters is in San Francisco in California. We pretty early on contributed to a group there called the Tipping Point Community that focuses on poverty in the Bay Area. And then before we went public earlier this year, we made sure that there was a non-insignificant carve-out in our cap table for Okta for Good, which is our program, our corporate social responsibility or social impact program, and a fund that we created. And so we were very, very proud, and I was very honored and excited that we could make our first donation from that fund to the Center for the Digital Nonprofit. So that's a little bit of background on us. I am here, and again, thank you very much for taking time. I'll talk really fast, try and crack some jokes, and we'll make it entertaining. Okay. Quick background on me. I didn't create this. When they put it in there, I said, putting these slides up there, they said people might care. I don't know if you care. My background is in technology. I got a computer science degree from Stanford about 20 years ago. I wrote enterprise software for a couple years. I started and ran a high-tech consulting firm, and then I joined a company called Salesforce.com in 2002, so 15 years ago. There's about 100 people there. I spent about 5 years building a bunch of businesses at Salesforce. We went public. It became successful, and so forth and so on. I actually met my current co-founder there. He ran all of engineering while I was building a bunch of businesses. And then I decided to leave and go back to school. And I got a graduate degree at MIT and in the entrepreneurship and innovation program there at MIT Sloan. And then I also did some work at Hummer Winblad, which is a early stage enterprise software venture capital firm. And then we started Okta in 2009. So we are about 8.5 years through our journey. We started with 2 people. We now have about 1,200 people in the organization, about 4,000 enterprise customers. The company went public earlier this year on NASDAQ, and which was a great event for many, many people, including for our Okta for
Welcome, everybody. I know it's the afternoon, but this is actually a panel I'm very excited to be up here talking with, because if you've ever heard me talk about the chapters, I get very excited. I've had the pleasure of attending probably, 6 or 7 chapter meetings over the last 2 or 2.5 years. And each chapter has its own DNA, and that's probably the best way I can describe them. Its own personalities, its own way of meeting, traditions, leaderships, even rituals that they've started. So let me introduce myself. I'm Alfred. I'm the Director of Membership. When I started, chapters were meeting very informally. As far as NetHope, the European chapter Welcome, everybody. I know it's the afternoon, but this is actually a panel I'm very excited to be up here talking with, because if you've ever heard me talk about the chapters, you know I get very excited. I've had the pleasure of attending probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 chapter meetings over the last 2 or 2.5 years. And each chapter has its own DNA, and that's probably the best way I can describe them. Its own personalities, its own way of meeting, traditions, leaderships, even rituals that they've started. So let me introduce myself. I'm Alfred. I'm the Director of Membership. When I started, chapters were meeting very informally. As far as NetHope, the European chapter was meeting twice a year, and occasionally some staff would go. And over the last 2 years, we have seen just this great energy around the different chapters. And in part is because some of our CIOs and other leaders in our organizations have seen the value of meeting regionally and being able to want to expand that to their local offices, to the different regions. So this week, we've heard from CIOs and CEOs and partners and the governor of Washington and just about everybody else. But today we get to hear from people who are working closely to the field, dealing with different challenges, dealing with different priorities. And it's an opportunity to hopefully give you a better kind of global view of what our members are doing and how they're overcoming some of the challenges where they work. Like the summit, the chapters are a place where ideas are born. I think maybe Jonathan, I'll steal your line that it's the incubation period, I think, for many ideas. But we've also seen some of our greatest initiatives come out of chapters. And so this is an opportunity to get our chapters together, to have a discussion about what their work is, and to hopefully get some collaboration just even among the chapters so that we can hopefully have a greater impact. NetHope is now over 50 global nonprofits, and we work all around the world. These chapters, we have 5 chapters, now expand to the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Europe, and North America. And they've had very successful initiatives coming out of the chapters. Today, I'm very happy to have this panel of members from the different chapters who have either taken the initiative to lead a chapter or volunteer their time to make sure that that they host a chapter, that we have a place to do it, and to follow up on the initiatives that come out of the chapters.
So, working on very, very important missions. So whether it's natural disasters and trying to find survivors of those, whether it's trying to decrease the child mortality rate, which I'll talk about in a couple slides as well, using technology, whether it's helping immigrants or people who are leaving conflict zones go somewhere else but still have an identity and be able to talk to other folks. Those are all very important things and very important ways that technology can be used to help people connect to each other. Now consider the identities that you all interact with, and this is just a sample set. When you think about the donors, you think about the volunteers, you think about the organizations that you might be working with or might be working under you, there's a lot of different constituents there. There's a lot of different people. Sometimes the peoples have actually multiple roles with your organizations. Sometimes they're trying to just get access to data. Sometimes they're trying to give you feedback. Sometimes you need to give them money. Sometimes they're trying to do it from a device you gave them. Sometimes they're trying to do it from a place where there's very little internet. These are all realities that I know that you all face, and these are the kinds of realities that we think Okta can help organizations of all shapes and sizes solve. So what do we actually do? We have an identity access management service. It runs as a cloud service, so it runs in the public cloud. You subscribe to it over the internet. And it helps organizations, so companies and organizations like yours, better manage and secure and control access to data. Now, those people can be all sorts of different people. They can be employees of yours, they can be contractors, they can be consultants, they can be customers of yours, or partners, or vendors, or suppliers, or volunteers, or donors. The access to data could be in any type of application. It could be in a cloud application like Salesforce. It could be in an application that you built yourself at Amazon. It could be in your on-premises infrastructure. It could be on a mobile application, mobile device. And then it could be accessed from anywhere, right? So over a desktop, or a laptop, or an iPad, or the BlackBerry that you're maybe using to do email right now. We are in Canada. Canada did invent Research in Motion, BlackBerry. No, all right. There you go. A couple either Canadians or people who feel sorry for me up front. Okay, so this is the world that we live in. This is the world of yesterday, right? So when I graduated college 20 years ago and started writing enterprise software, I was writing it in this monolithic environment where basically it was all on-premises infrastructure. It was all IBM and Oracle and CA, and none of it really worked inside. It was all inside the four walls of the firewall, and if you wanted to access home, you had to, first of all, there was no internet, but when there was internet, you had to do it over a VPN, and you had to do it on a company-owned machine, and this has all changed dramatically. Now with, if you just, and you think about how fast that has happened, right? When I joined Salesforce in 2002, so 15 years ago, the company had less than $100 million of revenue, and they were basically the biggest software as a service company. So basically, the entire cloud or software as a service industry was about $100 million, maybe $200 million or something. There's about $400 billion of software sold every year to companies and to organizations like yours. Okay, so $200 million, $400 billion, pretty small. This will have about $7 or $8 billion of revenue, and the entire software as a service world will be $50 billion. So we've gone from 250 million to 50 billion in the last 15 years. Now, it's still a small piece of 400 billion, but clearly that's a pretty fast adoption rate, and that adoption curve keeps accelerating as there's more and more applications that you can all use. You can go to any website, you can subscribe to them, you can get up and running in 20 minutes. That's pretty different. Not only that, the constituents, right? When I started in the industry, it was all about employees and contractors and consultants. And then maybe you would interact with your customers, but if you did that, it would be first over fax machines, and then it would be over email. Now it's about doing real-time integration with your customers. It's about giving them, website portals they can go to and get up-to-the-minute information. It's about, think about how you all got here. For those of you who don't live in Vancouver like me, you came here on an airplane. You probably got your, I got my boarding pass on my mobile phone with a QR code that they scan. And think about how different that is than 5, 7, 10 years ago. And this is only going to continue to accelerate because it's so much easier to build technology today. You can do it so much more quickly. You can do it so much more efficiently. It costs so much less, right? If you started a company 20 years ago and you raised $10 million of venture capital, you'd basically spend 5 of those first $10 million just buying servers. You'd basically call Sun Microsystems and Oracle and say, I just got $10 million, let me give you 5 million of it, and then figure out what I can do with the other 5. That's how you would start your software company. Today, you don't even call Amazon. You just go to the AWS website or the Azure website, and they start charging your credit card, and you're up and running in an hour. So that's very, very different. I think you're going to continue to see that acceleration. Now, what does that mean, and why are we talking about this? Well, it means that there's also a lot of different technology out there. If 2 people, like me and Todd, if 2 people were not even as good looking as we are able to start a company in an afternoon, you can imagine that the number of applications and access that's out there is tremendous, which means that it's not a homogeneous environment like it used to be, right? People 15 years ago, 20 years ago used to be, I'm an Oracle shop or a CA shop or an IBM shop, which means I just have an IBM rep and I buy everything from him or her. Today, you probably are subscribing to 20 or 40 or 100 different applications. You've got your email one, and you've got your marketing one, and you've got your donor management system that someone wrote, and you've got your volunteer database that you wrote, and all these other kinds of things. And you have to integrate them all. And you have to make sense of that, and you have to make sense of that not only for yourselves, but for your constituents, for your employees, and also for the people that you have to interact with. And that's where we can help. So if you think about what I just said, the fact that 2 hours ago, I was sitting at lunch in my room on email over the Wi-Fi in this environment, getting access to everything. It's clearly a situation where you can access from anywhere. And so people become the new perimeter. And the concept of you have to be behind the 4 walls of the firewall. At Okta, we've only been around for 8 or 9 years. We have no on-premise software. We have 0 on-premise software. We don't have a firewall because there's no on-premise software to manage. So we've taken it to the extreme, which I appreciate. You're going to say, well, you are the guy building the identity company. You should focus on identity. You're right. But it's also a very good example that you can build a company that has 1,200 employees. We have employees in about 20 different countries now. We have customers in 195 different countries. And we've done it all with 0 on-premise software. Like literally our closet with software in it is like a bunch of routers and a couple telco boxes for the customer support folks. That's about it. So taking a step back, what does this look like? Well, we talked about some of these changes. Oops, sorry, go back. Some of the slides didn't build properly. We talked about some of these changes. This slide basically talks about there's a bunch of big cloud providers that are out there today, companies like Amazon and Google and Microsoft, and you might have a relationship with one, two, or all three of them. There's a lot of smaller application providers out there. There's all sorts of operating systems that are out there. I know that for a lot of your organizations who've been around a long time, you probably have on-premise infrastructure and you don't throw it away. What IT typically does is they buy new things and they glue it on the front. And we like working in those environments. We also get to see a lot of different things. So because we have almost 4,000 organizations using our service today and millions of business people or organizational people logging in every day, we see a lot of things. So we see what people get to use. We see the kinds of applications they use. We see what's most popular. We even see what's most popular by segment. So you can even go onto our website. You can do this right now because you're getting bored of what I'm talking to you about and because you're probably using an Apple device, which actually has a browser, not like your RIM device that didn't have a browser, which who cares because email's the only thing that matters, and I could type in the dark on the keyboard because it worked and my wife didn't know. But anyway, I missed my BlackBerry. I was very important. You can go on your web browser right now and look on our website, okta.com, and you'll see there's businesses at work is what it's called, and you can actually see the most common applications used by folks in your sector, and by geography, and by size of organization, and all these other things, and it'll give you an idea of what people are doing, right? And it might be interesting or useful data for you. So every company becomes a technology company, right, in this new world that we just talked about. These are the main reasons that people come and use our service. So either they're trying to improve the end user experience while reducing cost and complexity, right? Because they're using these new cloud services. They're trying to enhance security, or they're trying to accelerate their business, right? They're trying to put a new customer-facing website up, or a new website for their vendors or their donors to interact with different groups. And these are the main problems when we go and talk to our thousands of customers and ask them why they're interested in a service like this. The problems we're helping them solve, the return on investment they're getting, the reason that the total cost of ownership is low and the payback periods are very quick, and all these kinds of things. Why are they doing it? This is what they tell us. And so if you look at a couple of these examples, I'll walk through just a few. First of all, Path, who is a member of NetHope, an organization with 700 doctors in about 40 different countries, if I recall correctly. They're just trying to get access to information out to the point of use of care as quickly as possible. A lot of times in areas where there's very little infrastructure. So just using a service like Okta allows them to do that. You think about groups like Team Rubicon, which is a marriage of veterans from the armed forces with folks focused on providing medical services in tough to get to areas, in particular natural disasters. This group was born out of the Haiti earthquake in 2010, if I recall. They use the service so that they can provide much better access to information, to resources, and to point of contact for all of their volunteers. Right? So mobile access on your phone, where you need to go, what you need to do. They do it all through the Okta service. And then finally, obviously, we do it for a lot of large organizations. American Express and Disney and NASDAQ and Nike and all these companies. Also companies like 20th Century Fox. So when you build a movie like The Martian, you actually have to interact with 200 different partner companies, right? Because some guy is creating the music and another lady is creating the lights, and then someone is doing the editing. And you want to make sure that the right people have access to the right content at the right time, but then when they're done, you can take them off your service, right? So you don't leave these open accounts. These are the kinds of problems that we help folks solve. When we think about the center for the digital nonprofit, when I spend my time, with Lauren and the rest of the organization talking about the core concepts, right? It comes down to people, process, and technology, which, by the way, is one of the main ways that I look at my business. You can get distracted with all sorts of numbers, and it turns out that when you have about 1,200 employees and you're the founder of the company, no one ever wants to give you bad news. So if I believed only what people told me in my company, everything was perfect all the time. So just not true. So I try and distill what people are telling me down to these three buckets. What's going on with the people, what's going on with the technology, what's going on with the process, the systems, right? Because we're a people-based organization. We spend north of 60 cents of every dollar on people, right? I don't have any factories. I don't have any big capital equipment expenditures. I'm trying to hire awesome people. I'm trying to hire, attract, retain great people, make them very successful, provide good benefits for their families, all these kinds of things. So I think a lot about this. And then when people often ask me, well, what do you think are the main characteristics of a successful organization? So if I turn around, by the way, that heart in the middle, that's the logo. Without the heart is the logo, is the overall logo for Okta, and with the heart is the Okta for Good program that we have. So that's why that's up there. I should have made that clear. A lot of times when I'm talking to either entrepreneurs who are starting companies, or I'm talking to some of my customers who are the CIOs and CTOs of the biggest organizations in the world, and they say to me, hey, I'm trying to innovate, or I'm trying to think differently, or I'm trying to move my organization forward, or I'm trying to solve problems in new ways, or I'm trying to make sure I'm not stuck just doing the same thing that I've been doing for 10 or 20 years because that's the way it is. Or even when I'm talking to our new employees, because we hire 10, 20 new employees every week. Company's growing very fast. I try and tell them, look, there's nothing sacred here. Just because that's how we're doing it today, all that means is that's how we're doing it today. That doesn't mean that's the right way to do it going forward. So you should assume that everything is up for grabs, and I want to innovate everywhere, except finance and legal, because I don't want to go to jail. So if you're not working in finance, if you are working in finance or legal, do exactly what they tell you. If you're working in any other organization, I want you to think about what we can do new, what we can do in a new way, and how we can push the envelope forward. And when we think about that, and people say, well, how do I think about big opportunities? These are the main attributes that I think about. And obviously, you have to have a big market, which, for all of you, the market is basically endless. It's how can you have the biggest impact, or how can you create the most leverage, or how can you take advantage of the resources that you have to have the biggest impact across the biggest stage possible. It's a differentiated vision, which in Silicon Valley is kind of a catchy phrase and a term that doesn't really mean much. In fact, so little that they created a cartoon, not a cartoon, but one of these shows called Silicon Valley. How many of you have seen it? Well, it doesn't really matter because I can't even see through the lights, but I assume some raise your hand, and if you didn't, you just raised it to make me feel good. It didn't work because I couldn't see it. There is a show called Silicon Valley. It's been around for a couple seasons. It makes fun of everything that we do in Silicon Valley. I only watched the first 2 episodes of the first season because it literally made me sick to my stomach. And my wife asked me, what's the problem? And I said, the problem is I work like 12 or 14 hours a day. I don't want to come home and spend my spare time watching a show making fun of how I just spent 12 or 14 hours. And she said, there. And she said, I'm going to watch it. You don't have to look. And anyway, she stopped watching it. So we have a good relationship, partnership, marriage. The third one is a clear strategy. This is one that I was fortunate to just hear a little bit some sessions throughout the day, in particular the panel right before. I commend everyone who is sitting in these stools because they were able to clearly articulate their strategy and the vision and the mission of what they're trying to do in like 2 sentences, which, by the way, is super hard. And if you can't do it, well, I know you can all do it. What I recommend is that you ask random people at your company if they can, or your organization, if they can tell you in 3 sentences, the traditional elevator pitch, which is like 20 seconds, what the mission of the organization is. If they can all do it, awesome. Congratulations. You're doing better than anyone else I've ever met, and you're probably lying. But you should, if there's one thing that I highly recommend, is that you try and get everyone to understand exactly what the strategy is and be able to enunciate it and tell you back what it is. Because you'll find that just by listening to what you say, you'll understand how quickly a message dissipates and how quickly like what you're trying to communicate to the rest of your organization and get them to follow you with dissipates. And all of a sudden it's like all sorts of random things going on. You're like, how did you even hear that? Didn't you hear what I said? Well, people just hear what they want to hear, right? Measurable results. This is a very important one, obviously, for organizations like ours. We went public about 7 months ago. We've had 2 quarters of public earnings now. So far so good. I'd knock on wood, but all of this is obviously plastic. But measuring results is very important. So any investments that you are all making, I'm sure that you're saying, hey, this is a very hard one for me. I have to understand kind of what the total cost of ownership is, what the ROI is, how I'm getting payback, why I should make these investments. That's critical to what you're trying to do. And we like to think that we're a data-driven organization, and I think that we're not bad, but I think that we can always do better, us here at Okta. So I'm always pushing the team to think more about it, and when they bring me theories or hypotheses, or they bring me programs and projects, I say, that's great, where's the data? Let's talk about that. And then finally, a winning team, right? None of this can happen without a winning team, because again, I'm sure that when you think about, if you think about any of the things I just said, for us at least, we spend a lot of money on people. And without having the best and the brightest, finding ways to motivate them all the time, finding ways to keep them excited about what we're doing, to believe in the vision, to push the envelope forward everywhere except legal or finance, you need an awesome winning team. So that's it. I'll leave you with the vision that we have as a company to enable any organization to use any technology. We think it's an important vision. For those of you who are customers, thank you very much. For those of you who are interested, I'd be happy to tell you more. I know that we have a number of folks who are here from Okta. And that was it. I'm like 2 minutes over the target time that I had. Did I do okay? Okay, I did okay. But thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I'd be happy to take any questions, answers, anything. Well, I'll take the questions and then give you the answers. How about that? And if you could just introduce yourself briefly and what organization you're from, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Vincent Richardson, and I'm the CIO with Concern Worldwide. We met in Las Vegas.
It's great to see you again, Vincent.
Likewise.
I mean, I can't see you, but I imagine you look as good as you did then.
I know. It's been crazy.
It's like hazy. It's like you're at a disco at like 2 in the morning or whatever they call them now. Sorry, I'm old.
So my question is kind of based on the entrepreneurial spirit of the growth of your company and the complementary skill sets you and your co-founder brought to the table. Could you hone in on what those discrete skill sets were that framed your role as COO and your co-founder as CEO? I'm very curious about that.
You mean how we picked our roles? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but what were the complementing skill sets?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is if you're thinking about either starting an entrepreneurial group inside your own organizations or helping another entrepreneur get going or thinking about these kinds of things, there's actually been a bunch of studies that are done on the data. So let's start with the data. The first data is that if you look at thousands of organizations, and MIT did a very, very good study on this with the Kauffman Foundation a couple years ago. 1 entrepreneur or 5 entrepreneurs plus always fail. I mean, first of all, the chance you're going to succeed is very, very low. In my business, it's like under 1%. It's like 1/10 of 1%, which I know might sound crazy to all of you. It is kind of crazy, but you got to kind of enjoy calculated risk. Now, if you look at that, you want to try and mitigate as much risk as you can. The data says a solo entrepreneur succeeds much less, as does an entrepreneurial group of, I think it's 5 or more. I think it's even 4 or more. It's 5 or more. So the ideal group is 2, 3, or 4. Now, 1 is very easy for me to understand now because it is, there's very hard times. I mean, I don't care how successful you are. And, if you got, Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or any of these other people to sit down after a couple Scotch whiskeys or whatever it is they drank and have an honest conversation with you, they will tell you about all sorts of really hard times. And if they don't, then they just forgot what they but they happen for sure. So if you're one person, it's very, very hard because you have no one else to bounce it off. So the highs and the lows, they happen just to you, and there's no one else going through exactly what you're going through. And by the way, everyone else in your organization, probably much like yours, is looking to you for leadership, and they're looking to you for support. So your job is to walk around, pumped up every day, more or less, as an internal cheerleader. So if there's no one else to help you when things are going poorly, it's even tougher. 4, or I guess it's 5 or more, there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. So 2, 3, or 4 is a good number. Todd and I knew each other from Salesforce because we had worked on some of the larger customers together. Again, this is a decade ago. He on the technology side and me on the business side, gotten to know each other a little bit. I also do not recommend you go into business with a close friend of yours or a relative or anything like that. We were not close friends. We were kind of professional acquaintances who had good professional respect for each other, but kind of different people. So the first thing is we dated for a little bit because that's what you do for a number of months. And then finally he said, okay, here's a list of people, here's a list of executives you can call at Salesforce who can tell you about me, kind of reference checks. And I looked at the list and I was like, well, that's great because you can call all those people and ask them about me. So that was good. We had kind of a common language. And then we were both engineers by background, which is important when you're starting a technology company. I had moved more to the business side of life though. So I'd spent a lot of my time building the sales engineering group and then a bunch of sales groups and then a bunch of business development groups at Salesforce. And he was the SVP of engineering. So he continued up the engineering track. And so we had a good mix of technical acumen and business acumen. And then I'd spent a bunch of time looking at startup technology companies to invest in as an investor as well at MIT. So I had a good idea what happened kind of on the other side of the table or behind the curtain, when the emperor wears no clothes. So that was a good mix. And then the CEO, COO mix kind of, why did we do it? We did it because we were trying to build an identity service in the cloud, which when we started 8 years ago, everyone told us was a horrible idea and it was never going to work. And obviously it has to be very secure, very reliable, very scalable, uptime is important, all those kinds of things. So to convince the first set of customers that we were going to do this, we thought that his legitimacy as being the guy who built Salesforce.com from a technology perspective was greater than my legitimacy of doing that. So he became the CEO. That's literally how it happened. I've spent more time with him than I have with my wife over the last 9 years. And we still don't spend much time together on the weekend because we have different lives and our kids are slightly different ages and we like to do different things. But yeah, it's a very important relationship and partnership that you have to figure out early on, because it's going to get tough very quickly. And you don't know what's going to happen. So I don't know if that exactly answered your question. Yeah. And today, how do we spend our time? I spend my time a lot with our, I talk to them every day, regardless of where we are. And then I spend a lot of my time with our enterprise customers, prospects, organizations like yours, with our investors, both on the sell side and the buy side, now that we're a public company, as well as the previous investors when we were a private company. I spend a lot of my time with the sales organization, obviously, the customer organization, and he spends more of his time with the engineering and product technology organization. So, good question. Thank you. Other questions?
Just a quick question. Really great presentation.
No, name an organization. Hang on. Come on. You got to follow the rules, man.
I'm an audience member just for this one. There's a quick one. Finance and legal are off the table.
Whoa, wait. A member of a 3-letter organization in the United States.
What about, here we go. Now I got my finance and legal are off the table. What about healthcare?
Healthcare?
Yeah, is that?
We actually do innovate in the benefits that we provide as a company. Yeah, we actually do. So we do not have, I'll give you an example. Well, we do where we don't cross the boundary of what is actually legal. So we don't do anything illegal. But just to be clear. Okay. Now, there is some great room. For example, I'll give you a good example, which is PTO, paid time off policy. Okay, now, there's an industry standard for technology in Silicon Valley, which is you accrue X number of hours per X number of days, or every day you work, you accrue X number of hours or something, and it ends up being these giant numbers of hundreds of hours, which equates to like weeks and whatever. And first of all, it's very rarely tracked. So if I have a top performing employee and he or she's been working around the clock because we had some technology problems to solve over the weekend and blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, I'm exhausted, I'm gonna take Thursday off. You're not gonna be like, okay, fill out a time card that says you took 8 hours off. So the numbers always, and I saw this at Salesforce, the numbers would always get ridiculous. Literally my managers used to tell me, take some time off and we won't talk about it. And I was like, well, how does that work? So literally when I left Salesforce, they gave me some giant check for like tens of thousands of dollars because it had been like, I had, the max of 160 hours accrued or whatever, which is like a month, whatever. So this is kind of, if you think about why that is, it's because when employees used to, when they started having employees go into factories or warehouses, they would literally punch a clock. Right? So you'd have like your little piece of paper. I don't know if any of you ever did this. I actually did this one summer when I was much, much younger, and I worked in a warehouse, and you'd punch the clock, and it would like punch what time you walked in, and then it would punch it at what time you walked out. And like if you went to lunch without punching it, you just like won 50 minutes or whatever, right? That was the trick, even though I was making like $3 an hour, so whatever it was. But so we have this relic of this old time that exists. And it's just kind of been carried over, and it doesn't really mean anything, and it's nonsensical, and it ends up also being a giant liability on your books because you have to carry the liability of the 160 hours or whatever for times whatever employees, and all of a sudden you have millions and millions and millions of dollars of liabilities, and you're like this. So we got rid of the PTO policy. So there is no PTO policy, which there's no vacation policy. So then some employees say that's unlimited vacation policy. Okay, well, if you want to think about it that way, you can think about it that way. Basically, you take whatever time off you need. So if you've been working very hard and you're tired, take a week off. Or if you want to go on a 3-week vacation during the summer. Now, you still have to perform. You still have results. We're a results and goal-oriented culture. Ours are largely on an annual basis, obviously, and on a quarterly basis, and they were long before we were public, so it's not like we kind of jammed them in once we went public. But as long as you're getting your work done, I don't care when you're getting it done, right? Because what did we just cover? We just covered the fact that you're going to be working from Starbucks, you're going to be working from home, you have to go to your in-laws over the holidays, and a good excuse for not spending time with your in-laws is, I got some work to do, I'll be upstairs in the room watching the football game on Thursday, right? Working, right? Yeah, I'll be down for dinner later. So I don't care. As long as you're getting your work done, you can do it. If you're most productive Sunday morning at 2 a.m., then work Sunday morning at 2 a.m. And if you get all your work done way ahead of time, yeah, I'm going to give you more work, but also you can take some vacation. So that's a good one. We got rid of it, and there's nothing accrued. There's no liability accrued, and employees feel like, hey, I'm tired. I got to take a day off. Great. Have a 4-day weekend. So so that's a good one. Now, that doesn't work everywhere. I'm half French, so the French do not like that program. So we have French employees, they do not get that program. They get you tell me exactly how many minutes you're working, French guy. No. The French are not allowed to work more than 35 hours a week if someone said yes, so they know. Although, we just tell them to work more, and if they say anything, they're going to be in big trouble. No. So it doesn't work everywhere. It works in North America, and it works in there's like a kind of a hybrid version of what I just said works in the UK. It does not work in France or Germany, actually. Germany either. So.
Thank you. I didn't use my name. I apologize. I asked about healthcare because I work for the U.S. government. So thanks for the answer.
No problem. What organization in the U.S. government? Okay, we'll take it offline. I want to. Come on. DOJ is a customer. Okay. Other questions? Hey, one of the Okta people, go sit next to that guy. Make sure he doesn't leave. Question in the back.
Hi, Eric Johnson, Danish Church Aid. A lot of the countries we work in, identity is really, really important. It can mean access to services, whether or not you have an identity, legal identity. And we work a lot in cash transfer programming. So rather than handing out food and...
I'm sorry, you work with what program? Sorry?
Cash transfer programming.
Okay, yep.
So rather than handing out food or non-food items, we give money, and that's becoming increasingly digital.
Yep.
And a lot of people are looking at this problem of digital identity, either through mobile network operators or credit cards or these kinds of things. Is your company looking at this at all and anticipating some of the changes that are coming in the markets that we work in, either from a B2B or a B2C perspective?
Yeah, that was like an awesome question, and it's very wide-ranging. So unfortunately, it says I only have 5 minutes and 2 seconds left. So let's get to answer that one in the short amount of time. You brought up a lot of very good points. So there's a whole concept of, let's see, what's the best way to talk about this? The first one is, today on enterprise identity. So we focus largely on customers, on organizations, either your types of organizations or private organizations, or the gentleman in the US government, who buy our services for their constituents. And their constituents can either be consumers or individuals, or it can be other businesses that they're trying to do business with. Okay. People have been asking us forever, when are you going to do personal Okta? Personal Okta, I want personal Okta, which I know is a nightmare because I have to manage it myself. And I make my 7+-year-old parents, basically they are like cybersecurity experts at this point, because anytime I go to their house, if I can crack into their Wi-Fi in under 3 minutes, we have to talk about it. So, this is true. So, my mom has got really, really good. Like she's got her neighbors come over and have her set Wi-Fi networks. And then they're like, hey, can your son come over and crack the, and I'm like, nah. I'm just coming to have dinner with my parents. I don't want to mess with your Wi-Fi network, neighbor, right? Anyway, so individual identity is very important, very, very complicated. It's in an enterprise identity because the personal, the laws around individual identity are much more country dependent than enterprise identity, and they are much more stringent, and they're much more complicated. For example, you just brought up like 3 examples that are all very specific to your country. So now, I think that there's going to be a lot, well, first of all, I hope it's going to get a lot better, okay, because the world as it currently exists is a nightmare. In the best case, you've got some, I'm sure, you all have your own schemes of like passwords that are written in some phone book, or they're written on some password protected Excel file, which by the way doesn't work because that Excel file, when you open it, leaves a unpassword protected copy on your machine. Anyway, we won't get into that, but this is very bad, and the services that are out there are not very good. I don't care which one you use. I mean, I know some of the guys who built some of the services, and they're good guys. I think it's just very hard business to build because people aren't willing to pay for it. So they think it's important, but they're not willing to assign money attributes to it. So that doesn't that's incongruent. But anyway, I think that there is going to be a lot of change. I think that blockchain, for example, I think is a very, very interesting technology and can be used in very interesting ways. I won't spend too much time on blockchain because there's probably a wide diversity of knowledge about blockchain, but it's basically a distributed ledger that's replicated around the world, so that if you can put your information somewhere and it could be checked, verified by any party, anytime. The issue with that is, first of all, the technology interfaces to blockchain today are very, very complicated. You have to be like a super technology expert, and in fact, even if you are, they get it wrong all the time. Just go Google blockchain hack and you'll have, or Bitcoin hack. Coinbase, I think, is the biggest bank that holds Bitcoins. Just go Google Coinbase hack, and you'll hear about people who get millions of dollars stolen out of Coinbase, which is like for Bitcoin on blockchain today. So it's got a long way to go. There's also another, which is, okay, it's hard for us all to remember usernames and passwords across all these websites today. All this would do is centralize it into one 64-character password. And if you forgot that, by the way, you're done. Like, there's no service to get it back from because it's distributed around the world. Okay, great. So now what are people going to do? They're going to go put it in their bank. Okay, but when they die, who had access? I mean, okay, it goes on forever. So I think that it is a big problem, personal identity. The examples that we have are, a big one is we worked actually with, I think, one of the NetHope groups, if I'm not mistaken, on Syrian refugees, right? The crisis that happened in, yeah, I'm right. In Europe, Syrian refugees show up and they have no identification. So that's like, okay, well, how do I figure out who this is? And then you have all the different European countries who have their own rules on who can go in and who can go out. And so that gets very, very complicated, and it's happening today. So there's no easy answer for that one. I think it's a very complicated problem. I think it's a very important problem as our lives become more and more digital. And then you have things that happen like the Equifax breach, which, for anyone who is either American or Canadian or British, it is potentially a disaster. Although it is a good example. We are using social security numbers that were created in 1936 for completely different purposes that were then bastardized by the credit card companies and the banks in the late 70s, 80s as their solution for personal identification. And in fact, your social security card, if you have one before 1970, it's not to be used for personal identification. And after 1974 does not say that anymore, because the law of the banks and the credit card agencies wanted to facilitate access to credit, make it quicker for you to get a credit card in America. And so they convinced the Social Security Department to take that off. And like, now you see where we are. So it's a good example that it's a big problem, it's a hairy problem. I think it's a complicated problem. It's one that I'm interested in and I'm working on with a bunch of other entrepreneurs, but I think it's gonna be a while, unfortunately. So, good question. We're over time, but this is great. Is there one last question I can take? Someone's saving the best one? No, I'm gonna get the hook. Lauren, you can give me the hook, it's cool. Yeah, all right. Thank you. Thanks.
Be restrained. It takes a lot to get him to come out and really tell you his opinion. So thank you, Freddie. That was fabulous, and really speaks to a lot of the issues that we are dealing with as a sector, and that we are dealing with as individual nonprofits. Okay, we have come to the end of the summit, but we are not quite done yet. Before we get started, for just a few closing comments, I know that I have been asked most this week is, where is the summit next year? I'm not going to tell you yet. But pull out your phone. I want you to pull out your summit agenda, pull it up, and if you go into the closing remarks session, I'm going to let you vote. Okay? So you get to vote. You can add a suggestion. You can, come up with another country if another location, if there's something that's not on the list that you would like to get promoted and come up to the list. And I want to look and see. We'll watch as we go through our closing comments to see where folks want to go for next year. Everybody find it? No. Okay, go into. Okay. Well, you can't see me. Okay. Okay, so it'll take a minute to come up and then pull up the session that's called Closing Remarks. Somebody found it. There's a little, it's loading. Okay, now we're killing the Wi-Fi. You know what? Freddie hacked it. That's totally what happened. Yep, pull up the closing remarks, and at the summit closing, there's an option. Pardon me. There's an option for being able to vote. Everybody find it? Okay, great. Okay. While you guys are doing that, we're going to do something else that's fun. I want to invite the Planson folks up. Where are Planson folks up? Do we have Planson folks? We still don't have Planson folks. Oh, yeah. Planson folks, there you are. Because we have our raffle winners.
We didn't realize we were coming on stage.
Oh, yeah, come on. No, make some comments. I'm going to turn this over to you guys.
All right. Okay. Yes. All right, so we have a raffle for some solar bags here. And the first one is the voltaic solar array bag. And that was for Bintu. All right. Yay! Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah. And then the next one is our Planson Emits Solar Backpack Kit. And that one is going to Kondwani. Did I say right? Yeah. Yeah. From Save the Children. And, okay.
It's really bright.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really bright.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations. Yeah.
That's all. Congratulations, guys. That's great. Okay, you guys, so you might not have heard that, but those guys thought it was really bright up here. All right. Oh, thank you so much, Mitsu. All right. We're a good-looking crowd. And I want to say, every year when we do the group photo, I worry how we're going to get everybody in there. But we were able to get everybody in there again this year, which is fantastic. I will say it was wonderful to have so many folks here this year, 325, 330 folks ultimately attending the summit this year, which is a tremendous number of folks came and shared and did a lot of hard work in trying to bring our organizations closer together and figure out solutions for all of the problems that we are challenged by across the world. But we are a big smiling group, and it was nice to see everybody throughout the week and to connect when we don't often have the chance to do so. If you haven't voted on where you want to go, this is your next reminder. While you're in there, I'm also gonna we also need to make sure that speakers, if you'll upload your slides, that would be great. And if you haven't done your session evaluations, we're having great feedback so far. We want to make sure that we hear everybody's voice around which sessions worked, and what we can do next year to improve. I also have a number of thank yous to do. This is a busy week. I know folks are exhausted after spending several days together and all the work that we've done in early mornings and late nights. And it's not possible without the hard work of a lot of folks. So first and foremost, I want to thank our sponsors. Microsoft and Cisco, CDW and Click, Okta, Tableau, Unit 4, Amazon, Open Systems. You guys were really absolutely critical in making this week successful. And absolutely. Show up, really make the summit possible, and allow us each year to welcome everyone to the summit and provide a great experience. That is supported by all of our our silver sponsors and all of our exhibitors who spent long hours talking with all of you, and trying to find solutions to some of the challenges that we as a sector are facing. So let's give all of these folks a round of applause as well. Great comment to me just before Freddie's keynote started, actually, that I really want to share with the Summit Steering Agenda, the Summit Agenda Steering Committee. These guys really did do a tremendous amount of work, and the comment is that, every year I come to the summit and 1 hour, there's 3 or 4 things that I really want to do, and then maybe each day there's an hour or 2 where nothing really resonates with me. It's just not relevant to my agency. And he said, and what was remarkable is this year, that didn't happen. And it didn't happen because Joe, Catherine, and Martin, and Melanie, and Pallavi, and Pietro, and Priscilla, and Stephanie spent hours working through the agenda to make sure that it was as relevant as possible to all of us here. So let's give everyone on the Summit Agenda Committee a big round of applause. And the team put together a word cloud, the evaluations that we've got coming in so far. And I love this word cloud. More is right in the middle. So it's great to see the feedback that we're getting. So do please go in and make sure you're filling out those evaluations, and we'll update the word cloud to see if it changes after everybody gets all of their work done. But a real compliment to the steering committee for the work that they've done. I would also be remiss if I didn't give a huge shout out to the NetHope Summit staff. All of these folks, I'm not going to read all of their names, but I am going to ask them all to stand up. You guys can see them, I can't. But if your name is on this list, if you're one of the NetHope folks that made this week possible, I want you to stand up, and let's give them a round of applause. Made sure that coffee got delivered and the rooms were right and the lights were bright and that the got us to the aquarium and back from the aquarium, and that the presentations worked, and all of the details that make this week possible. And how they remember all of those details and get them all covered is beyond me. But they do it, and surprisingly, they're even still smiling and happy on Thursday afternoon. So a real credit to them, and I want to give a special shout out to Elizabeth Bamber, who kind of coordinates all of the work that we do, because how she gets all of us moving in the right direction and keeps us moving in the right direction is beyond me. And perhaps most importantly, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank all of the NetHope members and the partners that come together and make this week as rich and fulfilling as it is. I know we say a lot that NetHope feels like a family, it feels like a community, and it does, because when we're together, we have the opportunity to have some great conversations, to deepen the partnerships that already exist, and to build some new ones. And it's really because all of you come and come with an open mind and an opportunity and a willingness to connect with one another in really meaningful ways, and to really listen to each other and think about how we can help all the communities that we serve around the world and help bring the sector along so that all of us can progress together and each of our organizations can achieve their respective missions. So I hope everybody will give yourselves a round of applause for the work that you've done. All right, where do folks think that we're going? What's the one you want? I'm going to have it refresh. Nairobi? Folks think we're going to Nairobi? Nairobi's a lovely town. Michael Duggan can show us around. Let's see, where will we be going next?
Alive with ideas. For you.
Here, the CEO of Concern Worldwide, and it gives me a huge pleasure to welcome the NetHope membership to Dublin, Ireland in 2018. There are so many reasons why this is going to be a great venue. Not Concern 50, but you're coming to a city that has been consistently voted among the friendliest cities in the world. It has pubs, it has poets, but actually it's also alive with the world's tech companies, one of the youngest cities in Ireland in terms of energy and looking to the future. We're going to be hosting the conference in the Royal Dublin Society, which was founded in 1731, and it was Ireland's first philanthropic and commercial venture that sought to improve both the economy and the culture of our country. So where else and where better could we be? So Olcha go Rowan, welcome to Ireland, and really look forward to seeing you there next year.
Thank you, Dominic. So there you go. We are off to Dublin next year, and it was lovely that Dominic was here this week to be able to record a little video. And no, we didn't let him in on the secret, too early. But before I conclude, I want to ask Vincent to come up and just give a personal welcome to next year's summit. And again, thank you all for being here this week.
Hey, everybody. So Dublin 2018. It's going to be an amazing and historical venue, as Dominic mentioned. Just like Hotel California, you can check out, but you can never leave. I'll be chairing the steering committee or the Summit Agenda Committee next year. I'll be looking for volunteers. I've already gang-pressed Tommy to join me on the committee, and we'll be looking for others to help out. So it's going to be a really great venue for next year. I suppose there isn't really anything else for me to say, but to close off and welcome you all to Dublin for next year. And also on behalf of AWS to invite us all outside for cocktails and maybe a certain Irish beer or two. So I'll close off by issuing a short Irish blessing that's designed to set people on their way when they're on a journey. So may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may the good Lord hold you safely in the palm of his hand. See you next year. Bye-bye.